Welcome everyone to our lesson on histogram. Today we will be exploring histograms. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to do three things. One, calculate frequency density, draw a histogram, and then identify a modal class. So to help us, let's consider a question. We have this question. Let me enlarge it. Okay. So a researcher timed how long it took each of 38 volunteers to perform a particular task. The results are shown in the table. So we have the time in seconds and then the frequency. We are supposed to answer 4 questions based on this table. We are supposed to state the width of the interval from 20 to 25. Then we are also supposed to calculate the frequency density of each interval. Then we draw a histogram to illustrate the data. Then finally, we state the modal class. Okay, so to do that, first, let's get this table in another version. So we have this table. Okay, the times that they gave us, I have shown it. Okay, this is the time that they gave, and then this is the frequency. Well, the other things here are things that will help us to construct a histogram. So please listen carefully. When you are given the times, the first thing that you need to do is to create what we call class boundaries. Well, class boundaries are basically the beginning and ending points for each interval. So the beginning of this was 5, so we indicate 5, and the ending is 10. The beginning of the next interval is 10. The ending is 20. Okay? Now, if you consider from the first interval to the second interval, there's no gap. Okay, this one ended with 10, this one started with 10. So if there's no gap, you just go on with the way I'm going about it. Okay, this started with 20, so you start with 20, ends at 25, ends at 25. So you do the same thing, so you get to the last point. It starts at 40 and then ends at 45. So all the starting points is what we call the lower class boundary. Okay, the lower class boundary, and then all the ending points are what we call the upper class boundary. Well, the next thing that you want to do is to create a column for what we call the interval width. Well, the interval width is just the height or the difference between the upper boundary and the lower boundary. Okay, so this one, 5 minus 10 will give you 5. 20 minus 10 will give you 10. Then we have 25 less 20 giving you 5. Same thing, 40 less 25, 15. Then 45 less 40 gives you 5. All right, good. Now, the next thing is we get our frequency from the table they give us. Okay, so when we go back to this table, we have the frequency here, and these are the frequencies given. Okay, so we include that in our table. So this is the frequency: 2, 12, 7, 15, and 2. Now, how do we calculate frequency density? Well, frequency density, let me denote frequency density as FD. Okay, so FD is equal to the frequency divided by the width, okay, the class width or the interval width. So if you take the first one, the frequency is what? Is 2, and the class width is 5. So 2 over 5, that will give you 0.4. Then the next one will be 12 divided by 10. Okay, so we have 12 divided by 10 giving you 1.2. That's why we have 5 and then 7 and 5. So we have 7 divided by 5 giving you 1.4. Then we have 15 and then 15. So 15 by 15, that is 1. Then we have 2 and 5. So 2 divided by 5 giving you 0.4 again. All right, so now that we have prepared the table, let's go and answer the question. Okay, so what is the first question? The first question said that we should state the interval width for the 20 to 25. So let's go back and consider. This is our interval width, right? So 20 to 25, the width was what? Was 5. So our answer is 5. Okay. So let's go to the II. II says that we should calculate the frequency densities for each of the interval. And that is what we have done in our table here. Okay, for each of the interval, we have calculated the frequency density. Okay, then the next thing that they want us to do is what is to draw a histogram. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, histogram is drawn based on two things. All right, you should take your axis seriously. When you are working with a histogram, you are dealing with frequency density against, okay, so the frequency density against the time that you were given. So if it is ages, then that would be frequency density against ages. If it is marks of, students, then frequency density against the marks. It's always frequency density on the vertical line, okay? All right. So when you take the first interval, that is from 5 to 10, okay, from 5 to 10, the frequency density was 0.4. So if this is the calibration that I have made. So from 5 here up to 10, the height is 0.4, and that's somewhere here. Okay. Now, if you consider the second interval, which is from 10 to 20, the frequency density was what? 1.2. So if this is 1, then 1.2 is maybe just around here. Okay. Then the next is from 20 to 25. And now from 20 to 25, the height is 1.4. So you increase it to 1.4, and that's somewhere around there. Then followed by 25 to 40. Now 25 to 40 had a height of 1. So if this is 1, then you trace it and you get it. That is 1. Okay. Then finally, from 40 to 45, the height is 0.4. So from 40 to 45, the height is 0.4, and then you are good to go. So this is how we draw histogram. Now, please be mindful of one thing. If you consider the intervals that we were given, the ending is the beginning. The ending of one interval is the beginning of the next one. Now, what that tells you is that these bars are joined together, and that is what we call histogram. If the bars are not joined together, that is a bar graph. Okay, so we want to see them together. All right, then that would mean that you have drawn a histogram. Then finally, we are supposed to what? State the modal class. Well, the modal class is the class with the highest frequency density. So let's go to our table and then look at the frequency densities that we have. Well, if you look at this, 1.4, it is the highest frequency density. And the class that corresponds to that is this class, okay, is 20 to 25. Okay, so that is our answer. Let me minimize it a little bit. So that's our answer. So that should be IV. So IV